Hello friends, we're having a beautiful day here on the West End, and I want to show you how to make your own fermentation starter. Now this starter can be used for making kimchi, fermenting any fruit or vegetables, old-fashioned style lacto-fermented pickles. So good, best kind of pickles ever. So I'm going to show you how to make your starter out of just 3 ingredients. And let's get started. All right, so all you need to make your fermentation starter is some fruit, some sugar. This is organic cane sugar. Don't use the GMO beet sugar. A glass jar and some filtered water. This needs to be either rainwater, spring water, not city tap water, because you do not want the chlorine in it. It will kill your bacteria, and obviously you do not want your fluoride in there either. So you need to get some sort of filtered water, distilled water. I use filtered rainwater, and I store all our rainwater in these glass jugs, and it is filtered with a Berkey filter. Then for today I'm going to use blackberries. These are some beautiful blackberries from my thornless blackberry bush. I think these things are huge. And the bush was a gift from my brother-in-law a couple years ago. And blackberries around here grow like crazy. And so at first I was like, oh nice, and we can go pick them wild anywhere. However, these are thornless, and these are huge, and I can grow them right here on my property, so I don't have to go out and get them. And now that I know I'm really happy with these, I am going to be planting them, taking them out of the pot. These came from a pot. The plant, I'm getting a lot of blackberries off it. And I'm going to be putting them in the ground next to the fence now that the fence is done, and then letting them grow along there. And I bet I'll see a lot more volume of grapes, or excuse me, blackberries out of that. So the best fruit to use for making your fermentation starter are berries. You can really use any fruit as long as you leave the skin on. So peach, cut up pieces of peaches, make sure you leave the skin on, because the yeast that's going to get the fermentation going is always typically on the outside layer of the fruit. But berries are especially high in yeast. When you look at a grape, and grapes as well, a grape or a blueberry, and you see that sort of white kind of coating on the outside, that is your yeast. So blueberries are really, really high. And I have made my yeast starter, or my fermentation starter, out of blueberries. Ginger is another good one, as long as you cut it up small and leave the skin on. Blackberries. Right here is one I started a couple days ago, and this is made with grapes, and I threw in a few raisins. Raisins are excellent because they're smaller, and so the yeast is, you've got more on there per amount that you're putting in there. So, but I put both grapes from last year that I pulled out of the freezer. And anyway, so how you do this is put in your fruit. You don't need very much. That's probably more than enough. In fact, I might even take a couple of these out and then just eat them later, because these are big. You don't need a whole lot to get this going. Though you can add fruit. You can add more fruit as you go. All right, and then you'll want to put in about a tablespoon to start with of sugar. And then you're going to add your water. And note, I'm only putting a little bit in. I'm not filling it all the way up yet. Notice this one is up higher. So, I forgot to have my little spoon ready. So then, of course, you want to stir this up. Get the sugar dissolving in there. The sugar, of course, is very important, because the yeast is going to there's sugar in the fruit, obviously, but the yeast is going to need a lot of extra sugar to really get going and get your nice fermentation. So what you'll do is then you're going to put a lid on. It doesn't have to be tight. Just put your lid on, just barely hand tight. Not even that. Just enough that it stays on there. Sorry about that. Little interruption. Somebody was at the door and dogs were going berserk. But anyway, you want to make sure that it's just loose enough where the gases can escape, so you don't have a huge mess. Now, for this will take about 3 days for it to be ready. It's going to depend on how warm it is in your house and where you put this, and the fruit you use. That can really make a difference. So for the next 3 days, what you want to do is add a little more water, add a little more sugar, another tablespoon of sugar, and then add about this much water. It's maybe about a half cup, whatever. I mean, there's no specific recipe exactly how much you have to add. You just want to keep adding, and you'll do that until it's full. Usually by the 3rd day, you'll know it's ready because it'll be very fizzy, very bubbly. Now this one's a couple days, and you can see it's already getting fizzy. If I was to hold this up to the mic, if the mic was, let me shake it again. I don't know if the mic will pick this up, but I don't know if you can hear that. It's getting fizzy, so it's pretty close to being ready. When it's tomorrow, it should probably be pretty good, because you won't need to shake it to get that. You'll just have to pick it up and it'll be fizzy, or open it up and you'll hear it. You just open it up and you'll just hear it fizz. And once it's ready, and this is what's really great, you guys, is that you simply take a 1/4 cup of this liquid and you add it to a quart jar. And if it's a 1/2 gallon jar, then you're going to use a 1/2 cup of whatever you're fermenting. So let's say I'm making, this is my favorite way to make kimchi. I've made kimchi for many years. I've done it the old-fashioned way, where you let it ferment. You do the salt brine, you put it in your jars, and you let it sit for 10 to 14 days. And love, love, love it. My oldest son loves it too. However, I did have some failures because for whatever reason, it didn't ferment, it rotted, and I hated throwing this out. Since I've been using this method for making kimchi, I have not had any failures. And I can have yummy, delicious, bubbly, very, very bubbly kimchi in 2 to 3 days, literally 2 to 3 days. So all I do for the kimchi, instead of having to do the whole salt brine process, is I simply put everything in the jar, all my spices, the cayenne pepper, the garlic, the ginger, whatever I'm using in kimchi, or whatever it is you're fermenting. You fill your jar up, you put in your 1/4 cup of fermentation starter, and then you fill it up the rest of the way with your filtered water. And then just set it on your counter and just keep an eye on it. You'll be a good idea to put a towel under it to catch anything that may bubble out from under the lid. But yeah, you want to make sure you put your lid on just like this. Same thing with whatever you're fermenting. This same method works to make beet kvass. You can do the same thing. You don't have to have whey. You can use your fermentation starter. Anything you want to ferment will work this way. And then you can have these just incredibly healthy probiotic fruits, vegetables, whatever you want, using this. You also can make a very wonderful natural soda with this same process. You take, let's say I'm going to make a whole gallon jug of juice. So I've got my juice in here, whatever it is, grape juice, raspberry juice, it doesn't matter, any kind of juice. And I have it in here. You'll probably need to add a little extra sugar, depending on how sweet your fruit is, because there'll need to be some sugar in there for the yeast to feed on. And then since I'd be using a gallon, obviously, you do the math, I'm going to use a whole cup of the fermentation starter. And then same idea, put it in there for the soda. Typically I just put a piece of cloth over it and a rubber band, and then let it sit 2 to 3 days, and then you're ready to go. You've got, sorry, dogs, be quiet. You've got some natural, healthy, homemade soda, and if you drink it up within the first, you'll want to, if you're wanting to avoid any alcohol, you want, even keeping it in the refrigerator, your soda will keep fermenting and eventually can turn to wine. So what you'll need to do is if you're like me and you're avoiding alcohol, or you're wanting to feed it to your children or grandchildren, you'll want it used up within 2 to 3 days. Otherwise, it'll start getting too strong. Me, I'm very sensitive to alcohol, so after 3 days of it sitting in the refrigerator, I can feel the alcohol in it, and so I just toss it after that. Anyway, so there was something else I was going to say about that, and I just had a brain cramp trying to remember. Oh, okay, so I know what it was. So once you use your starter, and I'm very sorry, the puppies, I need to work with them some more. They're still puppies, but they want to bark at everything. Hang on, let me go deal with the problem. Sigh. All right. Where was I? Okay, so anyway, once you use some of this, you can just build it right back up again. You fill it back up with your water, add a little more sugar, stir it good, let it sit for a little bit, make sure it's good and bubbly, and then if you're not fermenting stuff on a daily, every other day basis, I would suggest keeping this in the refrigerator. And let's say if you're using it once a week, then that's pretty good. Because you'll want to feed it at least once a week. So at that point, every time you pull it out of the refrigerator, you're gonna use it. You will let it get to room temperature first, so it's bubbly before you add it to whatever. And then, very similar to when you make sourdough. Then you add your water, add your sugar, put it back in the fridge, or let it get to room temperature again, then put it back in the fridge. Now also, this fermentation starter, though I haven't been very successful with it yet, I am going to keep working on this. You can use whichever kind you make, you can use as a replacement for store-bought bread yeast. Now, I've worked with a little bit. It does work, but I still have to keep practicing to figure out exactly what my ratios have got to be to get a real nice rise out of it. Because my goal is to eventually become, to be able to have my own yeast that I make myself, that's not a sourdough, but since not everybody around here likes sourdough, or we don't like sourdough for everything, then I want something that's got a sweeter, not sour, for the bread. And so I got to keep working with it, and once I get successful at it, then I will post a how-to video. I'll get my recipe put together, and so that you can be able to make your own yeast and use that for a yeast bread as well. I mean, that's the way they used to do it. They didn't go down to the store and buy some powdered yeast. They made their own yeast, whether it be through making a sourdough starter or using something like this. It's the healthiest way to go, because the store-bought yeast, I read something a while back about it and I was not impressed. It's not as bad as some things, but enough that I would like to get away from buying it. As well as just being able to be a little bit more self-reliant by making my own. So anyway, that I think I covered everything, hopefully. And so happy fermenting, and thanks for watching.